I think quite a few people, they have personal experiences, but then they end up talking themselves out of it. And
Yeah.
like, I didn't really experience that. That didn't happen,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. But my husband, he's now opened up a little bit more, but he's mostly a non-believer.
Generation X Paranormal. Well, hey everybody, welcome back.
Hey everyone.
It's Generation X Paranormal. I am Logan.
And I'm Nicole.
And thanks guys for coming because we've got a great show.
Yes.
We've had a few paranormal investigators before. And sometimes, they just talk about general ghost hunting or paranormal investigation, however you want to
label it,
frame that up. And, that's usually about the gist of it, just in the, their process and different tools that they use. But this is a first because we're actually going to talk to somebody that does a historical part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be talking to Elizabeth Welch. What can you tell us about Elizabeth Welch?
So Elizabeth is a seasoned paranormal investigator and historian with a passion for unraveling the mysteries of the past. She delves into the realms of the paranormal professionally, and she's been doing it since 2016. She brings a unique blend of investigative prowess and historical expertise to every exploration, with a knack for unearthing property histories and seamlessly integrating them into investigations. She strives to shed light on the unknown and unravel the stories that linger within the shadows.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's not wait. Let's get to talking to her.
Let's talk to Elizabeth.
Well, hey Elizabeth, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
You doing good?
Mm-hmm.
We're hot. I think
the humidity has hit the Midwest.
Yeah, we're in Missouri, so matter of fact, I just got off the lawnmower about an hour ago, and I'm just beat.
That's
so
what
much out there.
I just got in doing some yard work, and it's 94 outside, so I had to quickly get ready for this. And
yeah,
but it's
hydration is key. So, we've got a lot to kind of cover, but you have a lot of stuff that you've done, and you have such not just an investigative background, but now the historian background. But before we kind of get into a little bit of that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I'm from the Northern Virginia area, originally from South Carolina. I am a history teacher, and I am a 6-year paranormal investigator. But what kind of got me into paranormal investigations, actually, I feel like it's pretty stereotypical for most investigators. My childhood house was haunted, basically. So growing up with that, it was not fun. And it's kind of interesting. I gravitated towards the paranormal, but my sister and the rest of my family did not. They very much were like, nope. After experiencing that. And also around the same time when I was in high school, Ghost Hunters came out. So immediately I was like, oh my gosh, you can actually do something with this. I would love to go out. But again, I didn't really get the opportunity until I moved up here to the DC area, and I found one paranormal team that was looking for extra members. I joined them. And then eventually another team kind of came our way, and that team was kind of dissolving a little bit. So I ended up going to that team, and now I'm with Chesapeake Paranormal, and we're stationed in Northern Virginia, Maryland, in that area.
Yep.
Great.
That's awesome. Yeah. Before we got started, we kind of talked for a second. I'm pretty familiar with the whole Delmarva, BWI, all that area all too well. I was stationed out at in Oceana for a while, but that's we talked for a second before we got started. That particular area is just, well, I mean, for starters, you got DC, and DC is
Hmm.
very, very well known for a lot of hot spots.
Yes.
And then, of course, you've got so much battlefield history in that state that it's just, I mean, you guys probably have enough to
Yep.
go on for several lifetimes.
Yep.
So,
I'm really lucky. We're
yeah.
right next to Manassas. Balls Bluff is in literally my backyard. The battlefield of Monocacy is right across the river. So we've got a lot of Civil War history. And then, of course, Antietam and Gettysburg are less than an
Mhm.
hour's away. Less than an hour's drive away from here. So
Yeah.
it's pretty nice to be able to be so close to so much history.
I don't doubt that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Having been to Gettysburg, that place is and I wouldn't ever say I'm a psychic or anything, but I do get the touchy feelies when you're there, and it's just
It's heavy.
wow. It is very heavy to be there.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you were raised in a haunted house, and of course Nicole, she's got her
I was too.
her history with
Sorry.
that.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
Did you keep going throughout your life with it, or did you just kind of leave the whole paranormal ghost thing for a while? Obviously, kind of growing up, going to high school, college, all those sort of things.
So
What kind of, yeah.
we moved there when I was 9, I should say.
Okay.
And this is near Augusta, Georgia. I won't say exactly where for privacy
Mhm.
reasons. My parents actually still live in the house.
Okay.
But things have
Oh,
calmed
okay.
down a bit, but there's some stories I can share in a bit. But I lived there from basically 9 to 17. I graduated high school and I went off to the University of South Carolina. And I remember I was the weird ghost person. College, I loved ghost stories. I loved it all. I loved paranormal stuff, cryptid stuff, anything. And actually, it did not get me a lot of friends. So I kind of pushed that away a little bit for a little while. There wasn't many students who were interested in creating a paranormal team. I remember reaching out and trying to put out feelers. So this was in around 2007-8, so
Yeah.
and social media isn't what it is today, so it wasn't easy to try to
No.
find those people. And so I kind of put it on the back burner. Occasionally we would go out. This is kind of embarrassing, but anyone who is familiar with the University of South Carolina, we would go out to a place called Old State Road. You would drive down there. It was pitch black. It was the only area outside the city of Columbia where it would be pitch black, and you were supposed to see some guy with red eyes jumping out of the bushes or something. It was really dumb, but it was the only thing we could do. And what's interesting to me is that the campus is very, very known to be haunted, but people just, it didn't seem like there was anyone willing to try to investigate. And plus, the other thing is I am very strict about not trespassing at all. And so
Right.
there were people who were like, let's go to the tunnels. There were tunnels underneath the school, and let's go there. I'm like, no, I don't feel like getting arrested tonight. So,
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
yeah. So, while I was in South Carolina, after graduation, I was teaching for a few years. And again, I would go out, but I didn't really, what I would do is I would do kind of sort of paid investigations / tours. Like I remember going to Charleston and going to the old jail there. And then
yeah.
the Sorrel Weed House in Savannah. But
Wow, what a
whenever
crazy
I
place.
reached out online for groups, either they were a solid team that wasn't taking any new members at all, or they just, I didn't, as Gen Z would say, vibe with them very much.
Right. Yeah.
Like I was like, I don't know about you guys. And it wasn't, like I said, we moved up here. My husband, basically, he works for the federal government. We moved up here, and that's when I discovered this other team, and they were hosting a public ghost hunt, and we really got along great, and I was able to join their team. And that's kind of
great.
the rest is history from there. But before that, I had to do solo investigations where I would just go out to public historical places with a tape recorder, looking like a ridiculous person out in public. I would try to be as discreet as possible, but here I am with a recorder or using my phone as a recorder trying to do EVPs because that was pretty much the only thing I could do until I finally was able to join a team. So
yeah, we've definitely been the bearers of sort of tongue in cheek different things we could investigate with. But phones have come a long way too.
Oh, yeah. With the apps and stuff.
Yeah, we spoke with, I don't know if you're familiar with Ryan O'Neill from the Haunted series. They did Haunted Ireland and Haunted Scotland. But we spoke to him quite at length about it, and he's very passionate about what they call ITC, and now it's turned into such a huge tool for investigating now. So, yeah, I mean, but you're right. When it first started, we were all kind of in that counterculture. Everybody was like, what always makes me laugh when it comes to like, ghosts or anything paranormal or UFOs, most of the shows on TV are wildly popular, ridiculous demographics, ridiculous numbers, but yet nobody believes in it, so to speak, right? You talk to somebody, are you into ghosts? No, not at all. Well, let me tell you something. There's millions of people that watch this show, so that somebody's got to believe in it.
They're just afraid to admit it.
Just afraid to admit it. Everybody's back in the corner, but
and that's what I think quite a few people, they have personal experiences, but then they end up talking themselves out of it. And like, I didn't really experience that. That didn't happen, And it it's kind of interesting. But my husband, he's now opened up a little bit more, but he's mostly a non-believer. But it has to be blatant, something happening blatantly in front of him before he'll believe, because he'll talk himself out of it completely. I remember early on, I took him on a few investigations, and he's a history person too. He loved going and seeing architecture, being able to be in a spooky house in the middle of the night. But he was like, this isn't for me. But he tolerates me doing this.
Well, that's cool. I mean, I got extremely lucky because my wife is just as into it as I am. But I think if either one of us wasn't, I think we'd probably make the other at least come.
True, but you're a lot more skeptical than I am.
Yes, I am.
So actually, I've gotten him more on my side now after over the years. So
that's true. I am very much so I'm a skeptic, but I'm not. I don't have blinders on. I've seen enough in this world that I realize that there's some next level stuff going on, and I certainly don't have all the answers. So, but I am curious about one thing, and I didn't know this until you mentioned it. My father was an educator too, and he was heavily into the paranormal. In fact, he's the reason why I'm into it. And unfortunately he's passed by now, but at this time, but I always say that if he was still around, he'd probably be our third host, but, and probably still is, but, I remember him always kind of, he would do haunted houses and stuff during Halloween and things like that to his classroom. But he was always like, gosh, I'd really like to do a lot more, but I'm always conflicted about it. Yeah. As an educator, do you find it kind of difficult? Do you feel like you're living two different lives, or do you sometimes because, and we'll get into this more, but being what you do, you are a historian. So it is sort of, I mean, you can't be a paranormal investigator and not be somewhat of a historian. Otherwise, you got a pretty flat investigation. So
it's interesting you brought that up. I'm not. But it's interesting you brought that up because I think most of my students know what I do, and I'll tell you here's why. Basically, we have we used to, they recently shut down, but we had an event called Shocktober, and during the month of October, it was a, typical haunted house, like, you walk through, people jump out and dressed up.
Yeah.
But the first team I was a part of we led public investigations as well throughout the year. And this was done in the same town where my school is. And we would lead teams of people through. We'd show them the basics of ghost hunting, like here's the tools we use. If you brought it, we encourage them to bring any tools that they want to use. We lead them through EVP sessions and basically through different levels of this house. And the house name is Carlheim, and it's like a Victorian manor. Though again, they just shut it down for renovation, so it's not currently a haunted attraction, or we're not doing this either anymore with it. But one night while we were doing that, 2 of my students showed up with their parents. It was like a birthday gift for one of the students. And they were like, oh my gosh, Miss Welch. And I was like, oh no, because at that point I had tried to keep it separate, though I should have known eventually they were gonna. But I thought I was safe because it was supposed to be an 18 and up. But again, if you had parental permission or a parent with you, you could attend. They loved it. And in typical fashion, I remember that happened Saturday night, and Monday morning, sure enough, I had kids coming in my classroom. You hunt ghosts? You go ghost hunting? Like, everybody knew. And then other teachers knew. And so it pretty much was out there. So now I just begin the year. I have like a little about me, like about the class, how the class is managed and run. But I also have at the end, like, hobbies. And I do put ghost hunting. And they're like, what? And I was like, you'll hear stories from me later throughout the year.
Nice.
So around Halloween, I usually save a couple like ghost stories for them. I make sure I'm not pushing anything. I'm just, sharing that experience. We had,
That's so cool.
And then actually this year, the yearbook did a feature with me, and they wanted me to bring in all my equipment. So they took a picture of all the equipment and had a little interview with me. So now, like, awesome. I'm not as worried anymore, but it is awkward when one time I was having a parent meeting with an administrator, and the administrator just randomly decided to be like, oh yeah, and she hunts ghosts too. And I was like, please, don't. Now's not the time.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
But,
don't tee that up for me. I really don't.
But yeah, now it's not so much an issue. The kids actually, they think some are like, oh, you're weird, you're a weirdo, and I'm like, okay, what else is new? Yeah, of course I'm a weirdo, but the rest seem to really enjoy it.
Oh, that's cool.
That's good.
Yeah,
you can be yourself, because there's other hobbies in this world. People go to haunted houses all the time.
Yeah, that's
that's
right.
your thing. You should be able to just be who you are.
For sure.
Yeah.
So let's pivot a little bit let's get into the hunt, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'd imagine, we talked a little bit about how it started with phones and things like that and digital recorders. So what is your tools of choice? What do you go in armed up with?
I always suggest anyone who's going into ghost hunting, the first 2 tools you should get is a flashlight and a recorder. Those are the first things you should get. Flashlight's really for safety. It's not for, I know I've seen where people, screwed the cap off and, they do the yes, no questions with it. That's not why. It's really for safety reasons. Ghost hunting has put me in certain situations that, you have to make sure safety is a priority. We were once in I've been in abandoned buildings before, abandoned sheds, abandoned barns that, like, looking back, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have walked on that second story. So, safety equipment first, whenever necessary, but the flashlight, a recorder, the recorder is still my favorite tool. While it's dull having to go back and listen to hours of yourself talking and listening to the same conversations over and over and over again, if you're listening to multiple recorders, it's where we get our best evidence. It's where we get our EVPs. If it's a video, our video evidence. The only downside to it, and it's not exciting, is having to go and review through all of that evidence. And it takes hours. Like we tell our clients, if we're only there for 4 hours and we've got 10 recorders out. That's 40 hours that we're listening to, that we all as a team have to listen to. And we divvy it up. There's 5 of us, but, it's still a lot to go over, plus video and camcorders, anything else that might be there. Yeah. My most recent thing that I've seen that's new that I really like, and I really like it because it's affordable, are the cat balls. Those are pretty new. That started out as a cat toy, and when you touch it, they light up, and they're pretty colorful. I like cheap, I like easy tools. I am not made of money, so whenever I see pieces of equipment that are coming out that are $500, $600, or thousands of dollars, I'm like, that's cool. I'll never be able to see that, but that's cool.
Yeah.
I cannot afford that.
No, they're so expensive. And that DR60, we'd love to have that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I'm not paying $3,000-$4,000 for one of those.
Yeah.
And we've got nice equipment, but it's not. I mean, we certainly don't have.
No, it's not top of the line.
Top of the line. We do have a REM pod. We do have. So we met
Katie Stafford.
I don't know if you're familiar with who he is, but we met him, and we purchased one of his boxes. And of course, he autographed it and everything. We're not taking that on a ghost hunt because it's autographed by him. It just sits on our shelf, which is sad because it's actually a really good piece of gear. But there were other stuff there that were like, I think he had a Frank's box and it was awesome, but we're talking hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And you look at you get some of those FLIR things where they're doing the heat signatures. Those are in the thousands. So
well, you basically it has to be your main job, your main form of income before you go into something like that, which the 3 of us, it is not. So
definitely have a day job.
Yeah. So, and that's all of us have a day job. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm a network engineer, so I'm very analytical, which that's kind of what I take it with me. That's my, I'm very algorithm based. I'm very detail centered. And I guess that's the skeptic part of me. But then I'm torn because I kind of have this other part of me too. So, but yeah.
It's probably good to have us balanced out though.
Yeah, it is.
I'm a lot faster to just accept it.
Do you guys have like a resident skeptic in your team?
I feel like we don't, but we're all really good at being rational when things are happening. Though there have been times like, with that one piece of evidence I sent you guys where they cussed at us. There are times when we kind of lose it a little bit. I like to call myself a skeptical believer. For example, a lot of people love to, and I know the rest of my team can relate. They'll, if we're talking to strangers, they'll immediately show us pictures of, oh, look at this picture of an orb I caught. And I'm always suspicious of orbs. It has to be, the rule we kind of have in our evidence is it has to be clearly not dust. It clearly can't be a bug. And a lot of times, the only time we'll present it to a homeowner or a business owner or a property owner is if it ties in with some EVP evidence, which often that has happened in video, like an orb will go by and an EVP happens. And so we have had that quite a bit. But again, we're like, okay, where's the sound coming from? Figure it out, especially if we're in a town or city environment. There's a lot of outside noise contamination that sometimes can happen. We try to do our best at establishing a baseline when we go around with our EMF meters, making sure, we note where the hot spots are, where there's some ungrounded wire, so on and so forth, And we do a pretty good job. We know each other pretty well, that we don't get caught up in franticness. And we're like, when something happens, we're like, okay, what just happened? Where did that come from? Can it be explained, or what's going on? So.
Yeah, there's definitely those, there are definitely those paranormal investigators that like to, kind kind of be a little bit gregarious. I guess we
Yep.
could just go with
Yeah.
that. That sounds a little bit nicer than what some other people say, but that I would find that so stressful if that was an investigation like that. You know,
Mhm.
for us, it's already, you know, you're going into something like that and you already know that there's a good chance that there's potential entities or anything there. So there's already some built-in inherent stress with that.
Yeah.
But then to just be over the top to where, you know, it gets to the point where at some point you're going to tap out, you know, and
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. That level of energy it's good that they have it. That's not what I
Yeah.
bring to the table. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on that, so what's a typical investigation for you guys? What do you do? Kind of give us a 30,000-foot flyover and kind of how that
Sure.
goes.
So we specialize, we don't do a lot of paid investigations anymore. For fun, in fact, this August, a few of our team members, we are going to go to Tala, or Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, this August. And I'm excited about that because it'll be my first time going there. But what we typically do, we provide completely free, basically a ghost hunting service just to establish two people, make sure that they feel like they're validated or like, hey, you know, actually it's this, something else totally explainable is going on, to basically property owners, homeowners, and business owners. So we reach out to the public. Facebook has been the best way we've reached out. Honestly, interestingly enough, our best groups where we reach out to are like those Real Housewives groups or like
Yeah.
Real Ladies or and
Wow.
we get in those groups and we're like, hey, we're looking to investigate. We do our services for free. If you think your home is haunted, feel free to reach out to us, or your business is haunted, feel free to reach out to us. And we're pretty discreet if asked to be. If we're given permission, of course we share, but you know, there's been times where we've signed NDAs and, you know, we go in, a typical investigation typically lasts between 4 to 5 hours. So somewhere between 4 to 5 hours. It takes about 30 minutes to an hour to set up, depending on the size of the location. So I should have mentioned earlier, Shane, he claims he's not our leader, but he's our leader. He'll kill me for saying that, but he has all the tech equipment. He very much, he's a tech guy. So like our conversation earlier, he has all this tech equipment. So we help him set up. Previous to that investigation, what I like to do in the 2 to 3 weeks, and that's kind of where my side project going in kind of fits in, is that I like to learn as much about the history of the property as much as possible, who lived there, who died there, what events were associated with that property. And that helps us so much in our investigations, leading questions. Like, we're not starting from like, are there any men in here? Are there any women in here? Like, we
Right.
can have specific names and recall certain events. And especially like in our area, Civil War, pretty much every single building, there's something Civil War history
Oh,
related.
yeah.
But we typically like to have the property owner there, or somebody associated with the property there, just for accountability reasons. But also, we like having someone there because when things happen, they can see that we're not faking evidence, we're not, you know, doing anything suspicious, and they're experiencing it in real time as well. And so a lot of property owners have appreciated that, where especially business owners, we've had many business owners like, well, we have a couple waiters that have claimed they've seen dishes flying, or, you know, something crazy like that. But then at night when we go investigate, and then they're there and they're hearing the like out loud voices or out loud noises, and they're like, oh my gosh, I never noticed this before. It's pretty good. Good experience. It's very validating for us and for them.
Yeah.
And of course, there's been times though, there's been nothing. And we always say, just because we didn't experience anything doesn't mean your home or business is not haunted. It's just that nothing happened that night. Or, sometimes we do find some, reasons why they could be experiencing what they're experiencing. For example, Shane one time went out to a home. This was before I and two others joined the group, but went out to a home. Their child was having some weird experiences, and it turned out that the child's bed was right under the electrical box. So, yeah, they were getting a lot of that energy, and he was like, well, this is not good. Take paranormal stuff out of it. It's just not good for your health to be sleeping under that every night. So, there's been situations like that we've run into and encountered, that we're able to debunk things, or like a cabinet flying open. Well, it turns out the cabinet's always, just because it's on an angle or the floor's sloped, So we can go in and say, hey, this is actually what's happening. Then after the investigation, it takes us about 30 minutes to break everything down. We leave, and then we begin on our spare time. And again, we all have day jobs, but in our spare time, listening to hours and hours and hours of evidence. And then we all clip our findings, and then we like to get together one more time, and we pull our clips together, and we pick the best ones that we're going to present to the client. And then usually we have a reveal at that point. And sometimes the reveal is just them, in a computer. Sometimes they want to have a whole party and reveal, like we went to one business, I'll just say it's a business, and they invited all the employees in to listen to the evidence.
Wow.
One was a school.
Pressure.
Yeah. Oh, and it's always nerve-wracking because we're like, oh boy, and how are they going to react? The one that was most nerve-wracking to me, and it was one of our craziest investigations as well, was a school. It was a private school, and they kind of do this hybrid homeschooling private school, and they're actually pretty open. They've allowed us to talk about them, so they're wonderful. But they invited all their students, and their students ranged in ages 6 to 18. And they all showed up, and we kept, warning, but they were, very open to hearing. There was nothing negative. There was nothing at all negative. So otherwise we've been like, hold on. But we were worried, like, oh gosh, they're not going to want to be in here. And instead, one of the principals of the school, she said afterwards the kids were calling, spirits by name. Like there's a spirit named Jack there, and who was a little boy who died of appendicitis. And they're like, every morning they come in, they're like, good morning, Jack, and good night, Jack. And now it's a tradition to leave him toys by the fireplace. And so I think that's cool, where we can make some sort of difference for maybe those spirits. I think that's really cool thing that we've been able to do. So sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there at the end, but yeah.
No, that's a really good tangent, because to me, I personally think that, and I would find it very difficult to know where that fine line is to, I guess, introduce that to a younger audience. But I also see the tremendous amount of benefit in that too, because you can demystify a lot of things to make it to where, they don't have that immediate fear.
Right. Yeah.
So I would find that really difficult to do, but I do think there's some inherent value in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only ones I would think is like the 6, 7, and 8-year-olds.
Yeah,
maybe that's a little pretty young too.
Sure.
Introduce that too.
And I have a 6-year-old son, and that's been a bit of a challenge to navigate with him, because he now knows what I do, and he has 1,000 questions, and I don't want to lead him in any beliefs. I kind of want him to discover his own beliefs. I don't want to tell him like, this is how the world works, when I have no clue how the world works. That's the thing about ghost hunting. Everyone on the team, we all say we came into this hoping to get answers, and instead we have way more questions instant answers.
Absolutely.
Every
Yeah,
single
exactly.
investigation, it's like, okay, well, that's something else I never considered, or
Mm-hmm.
it's,
And
Well, and
I
kids,
have no
especially at
idea about
that
the
age,
afterlife.
right, right. Well, kids at that age, they're so imaginative. So I would
Mhm.
imagine imagine it's very difficult to discern whether they're actually seeing something, hearing
Yep.
something, or if it's their imagination running away with them. I mean, you always want to believe what they're saying,
Yes.
but I bet that's kind of a difficult thing to deal with going
Yeah.
into investigations.
Yeah.
yeah, and I also think that having more questions and you have answers
Yeah.
afterwards,
Yeah.
in my humble opinion, means you're doing it right.
Yes.
Because
Hopefully.
to me, yeah, for sure. To me, the way I always like to approach thing is I know I don't know a thing, and I'm okay with that. And
Mhm.
if I leave still not knowing anything, I'm okay with that too. But
Yeah.
just at least having a better understanding of what's going on,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because I don't think a single one of us is going to have that answer until
No.
we get that answer. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Exactly.
Someday we're
Exactly.
gonna know,
And maybe even not then,
and maybe not even then.
because that's part of your part of your job too.
Oh
Yeah,
They
gosh.
don't know they're dead. Yeah.
exactly. Has there ever been a time, and I love the fact you bring up the history part of it, because I think
Yeah, I'm
that
so curious to know like how you go about that.
yeah,
Like how do
honestly, yeah.
you what is the process you take in looking up the property records, all that stuff? How do you find all of that information before you go in?
It's taken a while to learn. Now, I'm a little bit ahead of the curve because I graduated from college with a Bachelor of Arts in History. So I had that background in research. But I did not start investigating, or what I should say, researching places that I was visiting that were haunted until let me back up. The first time I ever did that was for my own home. So my
Okay.
home, no one had died in it. So and that was one of the first things I did in college. Once I had access to the archives, once I had access to everything, I was like, okay, I want to know who was haunting my house. And I
Yeah.
still don't know. I have an
Mm,
idea, but I don't know for sure. But I was able to find out that our house was built on a former plantation in the South.
oh,
Mm.
oh,
Unfortunately, the quarters for the enslaved were literally, if you do a map overlay, they were in the street in front of my house. So that's where it would have
mm,
been.
Oh, well,
Um,
okay.
and so that was the first time I ever did that. But to walk you through my process, if I'm going looking at a new property, the first thing I do is I cheat a little bit. I run a died in the house report. It's about $10. So I like doing that because I don't have to go to that county or that parish's deed record place. And usually it can take so much time for them to get back to you. And then sometimes there's rules if you're not the owner of the property,
right.
there's a lot of
Mhm.
hangups.
Yeah.
And so I just run
I
a
don't,
died in the house report. And that gives
I
me
don't
any
know if I
idea of
call that
any,
cheating.
I don't,
I don't know if I call that cheating. I call that being resourceful. I mean,
yeah,
not to me
I don't
anyway.
know. Like I said, I'm very cheap. I like free resources, though. A lot of the resources I'm going to give are not free, unfortunately. But I do historical research on the side, so like it's stuff that I've already invested in. I run that report. I can see the names that are associated with the property, but unfortunately, it usually only goes back to maybe the 40s or the 30s. For
Mm.
older homes, and if I'm looking back, I try to look up town history, the plats where they were sold, bought and sold. A lot of counties have really good resources, and it depends on the state. For example, in Virginia, Library of Virginia is a wonderful resource. And I'm lucky in Loudoun County here that we have the Thomas Balch Library, so I often go there first. I'll go there in person. And sometimes it's funny because I've gone in there so much and they know what I do now and they want to know like what we find. So if we can tell them, but that, sometimes they'll pull all the resources before I get there and I feel kind of bad. I feel guilty, but they get involved as well. So they're a great resource. So if you're able to have a local library that's either a family history or genealogy library, they're a great tool. Once I have names and owners, the next place I go to is Ancestry. So I have an Ancestry.com account and I just have the typical American account. And I go into their basic search. I put, roughly when they were at this location. So like if it was 1855, I put their name in. And then usually family trees will pop up or census records pop up and I can see where they were at that location. And sometimes I get lucky and online through Ancestry, I can see deeds where the properties passed. So I recently did one property where I was able to trace the family from basically the 1700s passing down to father, son, all the way to the 1870s. And then another family picked up and they had it until basically 2022. So it was only 2 families from the Revolutionary War time. But, seeing the wills, seeing where, basically, who has bought and sold the property. And from there, I can also see their families. And that's what's nice about Ancestry, because if people have built a family tree, and there's been times where I've had to build the family tree just to keep things straight. But I can see, all the children that were born and died, the people who lived there. Unfortunately, like I said, I'm in Virginia, so slavery is just a fact of life pre-1860 here, or actually I should say 1865. So slave records, and, who lived on the property there. And I compile the names. My team, they're very patient with me because my reports end up being about 10 to 15 pages long. Just with all the data. A lot of times they do. Sometimes they're shorter, but I create a little cheat sheet at the end that's pretty much just a box grid that's like name, how the person died, or if there's an interesting story, when they died, did they die on the property or not? Though that doesn't mean that they don't haunt the place if they didn't die on the property. But I compile all that together. Another source I use is newspapers.com. Unfortunately, that's also not free, but the Library of Congress has free newspapers. So if people want to start out there, it's just not as easy to use as newspapers.com. But if someone is trying to investigate their own property, I highly recommend that you just do the trial. Try to find as much as you can and then cancel before you have to pay.
Right.
Hey, tools of the trade.
Or,
didn't Ancestry used to do like a combination, like Ancestry and newspapers together?
Yes.
Yeah, I used it at one point. Yeah, for that.
And I know a lot of libraries, if you have a family history library, they often have their own account. And if you get a card with them, you can log in through their account and do research at your library. So most libraries have an Ancestry account that you're allowed to use just for research purposes.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, kudos to you, because I've done the genealogy stuff with Ancestry, and I tell everyone, if you're going to sit down to do that, you have to devote at least 3 hours minimum if you're going to even try, because you just get down the loophole and you just got to keep going.
And see, my dad is an amateur genealogist, and so I've inherited that, where I study our family history. I love it. I just love finding, and that's the thing. People are like, "Oh, this is so boring." I'm like, no. This is like, you get to find stories about how people live. Like, I've uncovered murder plots. I've uncovered, tragedies, and it's pretty much like a soap opera when you're going through people's lives like that.
It's really true.
Agreed. Yeah. Like family stories, my grandmother's told me my entire life. I was able to find like the ancestor that came over, to America. And I'd heard all these stories and they didn't know what ship it was. It was this big long thing. They knew the first letter. I found the ship, was able to call my grandmother and tell her the name. And so it was really
That's
important to me. It
awesome.
was really, really big thing.
And
Yeah.
Ancestry, if you want to sponsor us, we're open to it. It's okay. What's okay, so we've now got our history and everything, and we've kind of gone through that part. We're going to get into some evidence, and this is the part that I've been excited to talk about. And for those listening and watching, guys, it's going to get a little R-rated. That's okay. It's not a big deal. But let's talk about I think, isn't this a disembodied voice? I don't know if this is an EVP, because I think you guys heard it, right?
You're the rated R one, right?
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yes, it was
We'll just
very
say it.
much. Yeah, it was very much out loud. To give you a little bit of background, we were see, and this is where we ended up with more questions than answers. It's a good example. We were at a location they don't wish to be known.
Sure.
But it's a building on the property. Supposedly the owner was union supporting. So one interesting thing about Northern Virginia that you don't see throughout the rest of the South is you do have a mix of people who supported the Union in the South kind of together. It's
Yes, you do.
it's not like there's a distinct line that was like, okay, we seceded and everyone else is Yankee and everyone else is Confederate. It just didn't happen that way. And
Before you go too far on
Okay.
that, though, hold on. I'm gonna
Sorry.
hold you up because I've got to get this off my chest. I'm originally from Arizona in the West Coast, California, and all that stuff, right? So I get stationed in Virginia Beach, and I'm walking around, and if you've ever been to Virginia Beach and you're a sailor, you're doing things that sailors do around there. And this girl comes up to me, and she's like, "Where are you guys from?" And I'm not going to do the accent because I don't do it well, but very much so a Southern accent. And I said, "Well, I'm from Arizona," and she called me a Yankee.
Oh my
Blew
God.
my mind. Blew my. I'm like, I knew what it was.
Well-
I knew what and I'm just like, I'm from Arizona.
It's hilarious
That's
now
so weird.
because Northern Virginia very much, especially my students, they're like, we're not Southerners. We're mid-Atlantic. We're mid-Atlantic. They try very hard.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. And
Sorry, I had to bring that up.
no, you're okay. I was a scalawag because I grew up in South Carolina, but I was very much pro-union. But my parents were from the north in California, so
There you go.
that kind of brought me into conflict a lot with my peers. Back
Yeah,
in
I
the
could
day.
definitely
sure.
understand that. Yeah. Any rate, please continue. I had to get that off my chest.
So this location supposedly was owned by union supporters, but you're going to hear in this clip where that kind of brings into question. However, the building was used as a hospital, and I can't remember off the top of my head, and I apologize. It was either after Antietam or after Gettysburg, where the South was coming back into Virginia when they were coming back from the North. And it was used as a temporary camp and hospital. So we think maybe that's why whatever said what it said. But I'll let you.
Hostility.
I'll let you take it from here. I won't
So
give
what we
too much
heard-
away.
That's okay. Am I allowed to say it? Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, first you got what they said first.
Well, tee it up because you're. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we should just let her. 'Cause she's the.
Yeah, you can tee it up. Tell us how
Okay,
I'll do
if
the
I
actual
remember-
part. but-
I hope I'm describing it. It's been a second since I've seen it.
Sure.
But basically, we have an investigator named Keijo who is she is on a chair in a room, and to set the scene, we are in the middle level of a house, but we're near a staircase. She's off in one room. I'm sitting on the stairs, and the rest of the team are kind of divided up between two other rooms, but we're in close contact with you. It seems like we're split up, but we're not really. If you were there, you kind of understand. And we were asking questions. We were getting a very grumpy guy coming through. We were hearing
I'd
some
say.
grumbling. And
Mm-hmm.
there's some EVPs before this one that we caught, just like, some angry. And we noticed that it was really responding to Civil War questions. So she basically asks, and she was not trying to egg on. We don't try to provoke. But she was like,
Mhm.
the South lost, right? Or the North won. I can't remember what she said. But basically,
I think it was, that was the
the,
essence of it. Yeah.
yeah.
And the
And
response
the
was a very resounding fuck you.
yes.
North one. What did it say?
Oh, that was a fuck you if I ever
Wait, that
heard.
was you, right?
No.
That wasn't you?
No.
Effing God.
Fuck you.
That was a...
That was a very clear fuck you.
Oh,
I heard that shit.
Are you kidding?
I'm getting
goosebumps
close.
all
Because
over.
that had been you.
We were,
So-
when I heard that, we were just like, what?
It shocked us. So, and I feel really guilty because I'm the only member of the team. I heard 2 syllables. I didn't hear it at the time, but everyone else heard it clearly. I was the furthest away, but I heard the duh, like that. And I was like, what did it say? And then Moose, our other investigator who's on the tape, that was a clear F you. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
basically,
very clear.
yeah, we were questioning it. And again, afterwards, that was kind of when those moments we were like, okay, let's get together. What just happened? And I remember one of us saying, like, was that even a word they used back then? And we had to go, I think we pulled out our phones and we were like, yeah, actually it was
Yeah.
that they would say that. And because we were like, this doesn't make sense. Is this, we thought that would be too recent for them to say that, but it was very, very angry, very, very mad. We've nicknamed him the Grumpy Man.
I'd say so, yeah.
Like,
I would say that's a pretty good moniker.
We took a break after that because we didn't want to amp whatever it was up. But it is one of those moments where, like, did that really just happen? Did Ghost just cuss us out? And she felt. What's interesting is everyone heard it like it was coming out from every, and that happens sometimes with out loud phenomenon where it doesn't sound like it's coming from a corner or it came from over there. Like sometimes it reverberates everywhere. And that was one of those moments. And to her, though, it sounded like it came up right behind her ear and said it out loud.
Oh, so
And
it was directed.
she said that was one of the most nerve-wracking moments that she's ever had.
I bet.
I like that.
It was nerve-wracking for
to get
us, so I can imagine.
To get a big visceral FU would be enough to nerve a lot of people, but if you think it's coming from behind you,
Well,
Yeah.
and it was so clear.
yeah, very
It sounded
clear.
like the person was alive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And if
it's still
you
one
know,
of
my
our...
mom listens to this, my nephews listen to this, so I apologize. You guys might want to earmuff them. But anyway, but no, that was honestly so clear of a disembodied voice that I don't know. I mean, there have been others that I've heard that have been really good, but that was, I mean, there was, especially if you use like a Frank's box or one of these other things where you're doing like, say for instance, the SS method or something like that. And, you got these on and you're hearing a lot of other voices and a lot of other things. And that's the whole point. And I'm not saying you struggle, but it's an effort to hear some of the stuff that you hear. There is 0.0 effort taken for this particular piece of evidence. But yeah, that was phenomenal.
Yeah.
What about, and we'll do one more because I want people to find some of this, if you don't mind sharing it or where they can find it. I mean, if you guys are okay with it, we might even put it, splice it into the episode if you're okay with that. But
We already kind of talked about Jack.
yeah, we talked about Jack.
Jack was pretty good.
Jack, are you here? Where's Jack at? I just heard a voice.
Jack? Or that too?
I just heard.
But
Yeah.
the grandmother one.
Yeah, the
Could
grandmother
you tell us
one's
a little
cool.
bit about that one?
Oh, the laugh?
Yes, yes.
I'm gonna take pictures.
I just didn't know.
So that's Granny. So to give you a little bit of backstory on that house, that's the school. So that's the school I
Okay.
was talking about. And that family owned that building. The building was built, I believe, between the 1820s and 1840s. And they owned it throughout the 1800s, stayed in the family all the way until the 1970s when this woman passed away. And she was known in town as Granny. And I believe she lived until her 90s. And she lived till she died in that house. And she was able to keep the history. Her grandson's an amazing resource. He's documented so much town history for Leesburg. This is in Leesburg, Virginia. And they're open to anyone knowing about them. It's the Embark Center in Leesburg. Okay. And so we had two spirits that we definitely felt reached out to us. The first one being Jack. So Jack was 6 years old and Granny's son. And he died in 1907. And he died of appendicitis. And it is literally one of the most tragic things as a historian. In fact, I recently just did a video and a blog post on this. One of the things just to prepare people for when you guys go through archives and when you're researching people, these were people too. They were once alive, and their stories can be tragic. And this family adored this boy. They have so many pictures of him. So many pictures of him. And I think the picture I shared, he's holding a teddy bear in it. Yeah. And he was very beloved. And when I talked to the grandson, evidently this was very sudden. They tried surgery saving him in 1907, and they were desperate to try to save him. They did, and they couldn't. The town knew this kid. He was a very friendly kid. And so his funeral, there were several obituaries. If you look, there's several obituaries that he had. And evidently a lot of people attended his funeral. And his family kept a box of all his things, like ribbons, pieces of clothing, like little papers he wrote from school. And so it was very emotional. Plus, my own son's name is Jack, so it was very eerie as well. And it kills me, having to research that. But Granny, she ended up staying in that house. She was younger than her husband. And unfortunately, a lot of her children died. I believe only one made it to adulthood. And then that one only had one child, which was the grandson. Wow. And she lived in the house. And we actually got a few clips from her besides that laugh. That laugh is, I'll go back to the laugh in a second. But one interesting clip we have, though I don't know if it's on our YouTube channel, and I'll have to ask Shane if he can put it up. But we asked her, she was addicted to primetime television or daytime television in the 60s and 70s. And her favorite show was I Love Lucy. And we talk about, like, did you watch Lawrence Welk? Did you watch I Love Lucy or whatever? We were just trying to think of any shows. And at one point she does respond out loud. Like, we heard a female, like, little moan or something. When we were talking, I believe it was I Love Lucy. Wow. And it was kind of crazy to think that someone from the late 1800s was alive all the way to that point, but she lived a long time. Yeah. But in this clip, I believe we are just moving from one room to another with the laughing clip. We did not hear that at the time. We don't respond to it. It's just in the background, and I can't remember the full conversation that we're even having. But Tracy, one of our investigators, is talking in the clip, and then you hear hee 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 like that. It just almost sounds like a witch cackle or something. But it definitely sounds like an older woman, and we believe that's Granny. So we're not, we're not 100% sure, but we think.
There's definitely a laugh for sure.
Oh yeah, you can hear it. Very clearly.
I would have probably been like, Lucy, you got some explaining to do.
Yeah.
with that's a terrible one, but
Keep your day job.
that's what I got to do, But
I'm here.
yeah, Jack, that I got to admit, if I was in that situation and my child was named Jack, that'd be heartbreaking. And
It was.
you're right.
It's hard.
When it
Yeah.
comes to this sort of thing, so many people forget the human element to it.
Mhm.
That these people existed. They had lives. They lived. They died. They loved. They did all those things, just like we did or do. And someday, hopefully not too soon, some of us are going to be on
Yeah.
that side of the fence, and
And
we
we
would hope that to be treated, respectfully.
Yeah.
and we have those clips of him. That was the very first time that I was around something so talkative out loud, and we just could not believe it. And we were saying names, and when we got to Jack, all of a sudden we started hearing hi, like it was so loud to the point we were like, okay, let's look outside. There's got to be someone sneaking a speaker in here. We being played, and
Mhm.
at one point it said, so Moose's real name is Kip, and it says hi Kip at one point, and I think he said when he came in, he said he introduced himself as Kip to the woman who is in charge of the school, but out loud besides
Okay.
that
Okay.
point he didn't say it. And then you hear the child go hi Kip at one point, and it was
Oh,
so
man.
talkative. And then, that's one of the few times on Investigation I literally was tearing up because I'd done all this research. I had learned all about this child and the tragedy. And then here he is trying to speak up, reach out. And he genuinely was like following us too from room to room.
Yeah.
And at first we were unnerved, but then we're like, this is a little boy. This is a little child.
Yeah.
And interestingly
Yeah.
enough, we don't know. We went back a year later. So we went back a year later and we didn't get as much evidence the second time. And one of the things that we're really sad about, though maybe happy, he did not come through at all the second time. We tried very hard to get him to come through. And we're hoping that maybe that experience helped him move on. I hope.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was just about to say that.
Because when you sit down and think about it, I don't want a 6-year-old child being stuck and,
No.
like that.
Yeah,
And
it's
see, that's where, again, more questions than answers.
Yeah.
Why,
Yeah.
why are they here? Why is a poor kid here, And so I like to believe we haven't been back since, though we're hoping maybe we can go back eventually. But I'm hoping that he was able to move on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely hope so.
Yeah. That's the saddest thing when these little kids, especially if it's
Yeah.
intelligent
Yes.
haunting, you think they're stuck there, like they don't understand and they're
It's
lost.
heartbreaking.
That's just, it bothers me too. So I
Yeah.
can see. Yeah.
Well, Elizabeth, let's do this. I know that you've got kind of a lot of things with your blog and things like that. Can you kind of give our audience kind of an idea of where they can find you and different things that you kind of got going on?
Yeah, so if you Google, it's Fortean Historian. That's kind of the name I've chosen for myself. All things Fortean and Historian, because I'm hoping to help combine history and the paranormal. I find that a lot of paranormal teams they do very minimal historical research. They don't tend to do these deeper dives, and it's really helped us get a lot of evidence. So that's a bit of my platform. I'm on YouTube, I'm on TikTok, and Twitter and Facebook. And if you find me through one of those places, you can find the other links to my blog as well. But I'm also part of a team called Chesapeake Paranormal, and we are on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. And Instagram, I should say, and Instagram, but we're very active on Facebook. I've got the logo. I don't know if you guys can see, but if you see a logo like that,
Oh, okay, yeah.
you're in the right place.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see. Okay,
Sorry, I was like, I wore this,
Awesome.
but then I realized you can't really see it, but it's okay.
that's okay. That's all right. I've got Beetlejuice on, and but
We've gone
yeah,
as
that's
far,
awesome.
we're on the East Coast, obviously. We've gone as far as New York and North Carolina. So New York to our north, North Carolina to our south. But we tend to stay in, we're called Chesapeake Paranormal. We tend to stay in the Chesapeake area of Maryland, Virginia, Northern Virginia, and sometimes a little bit into Delaware, and into Central Virginia, sometimes West Virginia as well. Kind of in that whole
But then
region.
you guys got to tackle that Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel.
Oh,
that's a nice long drive.
Or no, well, we're on the other side. We're near DC, so we're near DC.
Okay,
but,
yeah, that's right.
But
Yep, you're on the other
been
side.
down there. We have been down there.
That
The
is
one
a
that
trek.
terrifies me is the other Chesapeake Bay Bridge, which is on the north side. And oh my gosh, and I hate
Very
driving over
much
that
so.
thing.
Well, she got to see that for the first time a couple years back. We were visiting, and we were going underneath, and there was a ship coming over. And I said to her, I'm like, that's every time. She's like, that freaks me out.
I don't like that.
It's weird. It is so weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling.
Yeah, for sure. But listen, Elizabeth, we had a great time. Thank you so much for coming on. We were excited to talk to you, and maybe we'll bring you back. We will hopefully get some more evidence from you guys and kind of get everything on here.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't mind, like I said, we'll add some of that to the show so that
Sure.
our audience can kind of get an idea too. And we'll put
all your
links and
links,
stuff
yeah.
and get you guys kind of some traffic out that way.
Thank you. Thank you.
You bet. Well, we'll go ahead and let you have the rest of your night and say hi to the fishes for us, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.
You're
Mhm.
welcome. And thanks again to Elizabeth for coming.
Yeah,
that was a
it's
great.
been great.
That was really good. Yeah, like we had talked about before, we've had other guests on that do the ghost hunting, but it's nice to kind of push the history part of it, because I really believe that it's a flat investigation if you really don't know kind of the history of where you're at.
Agreed. And I have to say, the first time that we saw somebody actually do that was Kindred Spirits.
Yep.
So Amy Bruni and Adam Berry.
Shout out.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that show.
Mhm.
It's not back on anymore, but I love that aspect that they went and did, because it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's like walking into a room full of people and just be like, "Hey, you,"
Yeah.
and
really.
expecting a certain person to reply. If you have that person's name and you can refer to them, they feel special.
Well, there's a level
You know
of
what
respect
I mean?
too.
Yeah, I mean, like they know. Okay, they're talking to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you go in there already demonstrating a level of respect because you've taken the time to actually research them and figure out, again, these were people that were alive. And,
Yeah.
well, being that they are, people, and, there's other bad things, but not often. But, provided they are disembodied and they are previous living, like I said, they lived, they loved, they laughed, they did everything we do. So going in there with, general understanding of what had happened, kind of a little bit of their history, at least makes them feel like you care about them. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, just think about like yourself.
yeah,
If something happens to you and some stranger walks in, would you rather them say, "Hey, Nicole, hey,
Oh,
Logan,"
yeah. You call
and
me.
ask us a question, or "Are you a man? Or are you a woman?" I'd be like, "Go away."
Let me tell you something. If you guys are listening to this and I'm gone, I'm from the great beyond, and you don't call me by my name, there's going to be consequences and repercussions.
But no, I think it's very beneficial, and they can talk to them about so many things. Like she was describing about the daytime talk shows,
Yeah.
something that the woman enjoyed during her lifetime. I mean, that's more like a conversation you
It
would
is.
have with a loved one than just random questions. So I gotta give
Yep.
kudos for that. But yeah, if you want to reach out to her, we'll put all the links
Yep.
on our Facebook page
Yep.
along with the video when it comes out, and you can reach out.
That sounds good. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much. Let us know what you think, and we'll see you next week.
I'll see you next week.